Welcome back. And if you are someone who is not here for hype or noise but genuinely wants to understand what is happening beneath the surface of global finance, then you are in the right place. Before we dive in, I want to sincerely thank everyone who supports this channel by liking the videos, subscribing, and watching all the way through, because those simple actions help this channel grow far more than most people realize, and that support truly means a lot. Now let's move directly into today's subject, because it is important and it has created a significant amount of confusion across the market. Recently, Swift announced that it is working on its own proprietary blockchain, and as soon as that news broke, many people immediately began asking the same questions. If Swift has its own blockchain, does that mean the XRP ledger is no longer necessary? Is this negative for Ripple? And does this mean XRP is becoming irrelevant? On the surface, those concerns seem reasonable. In the early days, Ripple openly discussed improving or even replacing certain components of the Swift system using blockchain technology. So when people now hear that Swift itself is developing a blockchain, it feels like direct competition. Some even believe this could remove XRP entirely from the equation. But as is often the case in finance, the surface narrative rarely tells the full story. In this video, we are going to slow everything down and break this topic apart step by step. We are going to explain what Swift actually is, what a private blockchain really means, how it differs from a public ledger like the XRP ledger, and whether this move by Swift is truly a threat or something very different altogether. I want you to stay with me through this entire breakdown, because by the end, your understanding of XRP, Ripple, and institutional blockchain adoption will be far clearer. First, let's clear something up directly so there is no confusion. In my view, Swift is not building on the XRP ledger. They are creating their own private blockchain, which is exactly what you would expect from a legacy financial institution like Swift. They prioritize control, predictability, and closed environments. So the real question is not what they are building, but how much it actually competes with Ripple and the XRP ledger. To understand that, you have to understand what Ripple is today. Ripple is no longer just a payments company. Many people remain stuck in an outdated narrative where Ripple only equals cross-border payments. That may have been the starting point, but it was never the end point. Today, Ripple operates across custody, tokenization, stablecoins, liquidity solutions, and broader financial infrastructure. Payments were the entry point, not the final destination. A helpful way to think about this is with a simple business analogy. Amazon did not begin as the world's largest technology and logistics company. Amazon started by selling books online, and at the time, many people laughed at the idea. Traditional bookstores had physical locations, loyal customers, and decades of experience, and many believed Amazon could never compete. But selling books was never the true innovation. The real innovation was e-commerce itself. Ripple follows a very similar trajectory. Cross-border payments were the proof of concept. They demonstrated that blockchain-based settlement could be faster, cheaper, and more efficient. But the long-term vision was always much broader. It was about building next-generation financial infrastructure, not just improving a single process. Now compare that with what Swift is doing. Swift is not reinventing finance. It is modernizing its existing system. A private blockchain, in simple terms, is essentially a more advanced internal database with some blockchain characteristics. It remains closed, permissioned, and centrally controlled. That does not make it useless, but it does make it fundamentally different from a public distributed ledger. This distinction is critical. A private blockchain helps Swift serve its current customers more efficiently, while a public blockchain like the XRPL is designed to function as part of an open internet of value. These are very different objectives. Another point many people overlook is timing. Ripple has been building blockchain infrastructure for over a decade, which means years of technological development, talent accumulation, partnerships, and real-world testing. Swift is entering this space much later, and history shows that when legacy institutions enter disruptive markets late, they usually validate the disruptor rather than defeat it. Think about Tesla. Traditional car manufacturers had more capital, more factories, and more experience, yet Tesla was built around electric vehicles from the beginning. Electric technology was part of its core DNA. The same principle applies here. Blockchain is not something Ripple added later. Blockchain is what Ripple is. For Swift, Blockchain is an add-on. When you step back and look at the broader picture, SWIFT's announcement is not a death blow to XRP. In many ways, it is confirmation that Ripple was early and correct, and that global finance is moving toward blockchain-based infrastructure. The real question is who is best positioned to lead that future. We need to clearly separate two ideas that are often conflated: private blockchains and public blockchains. Although they share the word blockchain, in practice they solve very different problems and serve very different audiences. A public blockchain like the XRP ledger operates in the opposite way. It is open, neutral, and accessible, with no single owner and no central switch that can be turned off. This openness is not a flaw. It is the defining feature that allows it to operate as shared financial infrastructure, similar to how the internet operates as shared communication infrastructure. When people ask why XRP is needed if SWIFT has a blockchain, they are assuming both systems are competing for the same role, which they are not. SWIFT's blockchain serves SWIFT's network, while the XRP ledger serves a global open ecosystem that extends beyond any one institution. One is an internal upgrade, the other is external infrastructure. Interoperability is another major difference. Public blockchains are designed to connect across systems, assets, and networks. The XRP ledger is built to interact with exchanges, wallets, institutions, and applications worldwide. Private blockchains are optimized for internal efficiency and typically struggle with global composability, limiting their long-term flexibility. This is where Ripple's strategy becomes important. Ripple is not trying to replace all legacy systems overnight. Instead, it is building tools that allow institutions to connect to public blockchain infrastructure in compliant and controlled ways, including liquidity solutions, custody, tokenization, and stablecoins. Payments are just one component. SWIFT, meanwhile, is focused on defending its existing business, which is understandable, but that also means migrating clients, retraining staff, maintaining legacy systems, and avoiding disruption to trillions of dollars in daily transactions, which is a massive operational challenge. There is also a cultural difference that is often ignored. Ripple is a technology-first company with engineers and cryptographers at its core, while for SWIFT, blockchain is a tool adopted later rather than part of its identity. Innovation is not just about tools, it is about mindset. History repeatedly shows that companies born into a new model tend to outperform those that adapt to it later. Network effects further strengthen public blockchains. Public ledgers gain value as more developers, institutions, and users build on them without permission. Private blockchains do not benefit in the same way, as growth is intentionally limited. Even successful private systems still require bridges to the broader financial world, liquidity access, and neutral settlement layers, which is where public blockchains remain essential. Financial infrastructure is not winner-take-all. Multiple systems coexist, each serving different roles. SWIFT upgrading its technology does not eliminate the need for public settlement, it highlights the limitations of closed systems. When value needs to move across currencies, jurisdictions, and ledgers, a neutral bridge asset like XRP becomes critical. XRP was not designed to replace banks, but to connect fragmented systems efficiently. Internal efficiency does not solve global coordination, and private blockchains do not remove complexity. They manage it internally. As systems fragment further, the need for neutral infrastructure increases. Institutions do not choose one system exclusively, they layer technologies over time, which makes interoperability more important than dominance. XRP's role in liquidity on demand remains relevant regardless of internal messaging improvements. Maintaining liquidity across multiple private systems is costly and inefficient, while XRP reduces that friction by acting as a temporary bridge. Neutrality also matters, because public ledgers are not owned by any single entity, reducing geopolitical and institutional friction. As tokenization expands, settlement layers will be required across asset classes, and public ledgers are uniquely suited for this role. When viewed from a systems perspective, SWIFT building a blockchain does not make XRP irrelevant. It changes the environment, but it does not remove the need for neutral bridges. SWIFT is improving messaging, while Ripple is building across multiple layers, which is why Ripple's head start is so important. As more private blockchains emerge, the distinction between internal efficiency tools and global settlement infrastructure will become clearer, and XRP sits firmly in the latter category. Legacy institutions often adopt new technology to protect their position rather than lead transformation, which tends to validate early innovators rather than replace them. Swift's blockchain effort is about preserving its core business under strict constraints, while Ripple's blockchain native structure allows faster iteration and broader integration. Over time, this difference compounds. Blockchain-native companies attract top talent and avoid internal conflicts tied to legacy systems, while private systems face innovation limits and internal resistance. Public ecosystems thrive on decentralized innovation, while private systems remain constrained and eventually rely on public infrastructure for reach and liquidity. Regulatory clarity further strengthens Ripple's position, as years of engagement and compliance work become an advantage as the market matures. When all of this is considered, Swift's move looks less like a threat and more like confirmation that blockchain-based infrastructure is inevitable and that Ripple's early vision was correct. It reinforces why Ripple remains ahead and why XRP continues to matter. For observers, the key is separating fear from facts. Headlines may sound alarming, but structural realities tell a different story. Ripple's decade-long head start, integrated ecosystem, public ledger, and alignment with real-world financial needs provide advantages that cannot be quickly replicated.